Hello everybody, my name is Naaya Mehta. Today, I'm in conversation with Dr. Srinath Reddy, the President of Public Health Foundation of India, PHFI, and the former head of the Department of Cardiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And we're here to talk about food. Let's Fix Our Food is an initiative to involve adolescents in shaping policy and public actions influencing our food environment. Youth participation is encouraged, and our inputs are taken to increase awareness, strengthen regulations in food marketing, and compliance to public policy efforts. As part of the Adolescent Network, we also support PHFI's and consortium partners' existing efforts to mobilize and guide action against unhealthy food environment. We help make informed food choices and advocate a physically active lifestyle for all. I've been a part of PHFI as an Adolescent Network member under the Let's Fix Our Food initiative and Youth Health Ambassador since July 2021, and have been actively involved in lending my opinions, ideas, and solutions to a variety of PHFI's focus areas, including NCD policy, adolescent well-being, as well as the environmental agenda. It has been an amazing experience as we work to try and make a difference. So good day, Dr. Reddy. I look forward to our conversation.
Hi, Naaya. Pleasure being with you, and I look forward to the conversation as well.
Absolutely. So Dr. Reddy, the first question is simple. Why do we need to fix our food?
Actually, our food is absolutely essential for our health, and for younger people, it's essential for their growth. For older people, it's essential to maintain the body in good functioning order. Unfortunately, the way our food habits have changed over the years, we are now consuming far less of the healthy foods, which are good for our nutrition and health, and are consuming far more of unhealthy foods, which are actually injuring our health in very many ways. We, for example, eat much less of fruit and vegetables the way we should. We take very little of whole grains. We take refined grains. We take a number of unhealthy edible oils. And most importantly, we take a lot more of salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats than we should. And we see that happening because of ultra-processed foods and sugar-sweetened beverages, which are actually being marketed very aggressively and have become a sort of our staple food now in many families. And therefore, that is a major cause for concern, because our health and our well-being are being constantly eroded by the nature of our eating. In fact, it's not just our health. Interestingly, what we eat goes into our gut, and there are trillions of bacteria that are living there, which help us maintain our immunity, which help us by manufacturing essential vitamins, and they fight off fairly pathogenic microbes which may try and enter the body. And these microbes which are helpful for us, the microbiome, actually survive on some of the nutrients like fiber in our food. And if we deprive them, then our health is suffering because our immunity suffers, and we are much more likely to have a variety of chronic diseases as a result. So it's important that we maintain our nutritional balance, and that's why our food environment matters a lot. And when we talk about environment, we are talking about production, we are talking about processing, we are talking about packaging, we are talking about marketing, we are talking about promotion. All of these constitute the food environment, and we need to change it at every single step.
Like you talked about, there's an unbalanced nutrition called we know as malnutrition. Now, while malnutrition is often associated with being underweight, it can also be linked to obesity. Can you please explain this dual burden of malnutrition and share a bit about how it can be addressed?
There are actually three phases of malnutrition. What we call undernutrition, which is underweight, wasting, and stunting. Those are the three forms of undernutrition. That's because we are not getting sufficient amount of calories into the body, but more importantly, we are also not getting sufficient amount of nutrients into the body. But then there is also what has been called overnutrition, but which is actually overweight and obesity, where again, we are not getting the right kind of nutrients into the body, but we are getting far more calories than we are actually spending by way of physical activity. And that tends to get accumulated in the body as fat. And fat in the wrong places too. It actually is more likely to get into the abdomen, around the organs of the abdomen. It's called visceral adiposity. And that can be very dangerous because it causes a huge amount of inflammation in the body, all over the organs, blood vessels, and can cause a variety of diseases from heart diseases to diabetes and so on, and cancers. But there is also a third variety of malnutrition, which is micronutrient deficiency, where you don't get essential minerals and vitamins that you need. And that can happen in so-called undernutrition. It can happen with overweight and obesity. It's a cross-cutting type of malnutrition. And all this is because we are eating the wrong kind of foods. And that's why we see this as a continuum. And actually, people who are born underweight or undernourished are more likely to develop visceral adiposity or abdominal fat as their food intake increases, and more likely to get diabetes and heart disease. And even people who are overweight and obese are quite often deficient in micronutrients, and particularly their diets lack fiber and essential minerals and vitamins. So this is an artificial division. By fixing our food environment, we can fix all three types of malnutrition.
Absolutely, sir. Recently, at a capacity building workshop, we, the adolescent network members, learned about the consequences of high fat, sugar, and salt food items, also known as HFSS food items. What are the existing laws and guidelines against them, and what more can be done? Many countries around the world are running campaigns to regulate this. So, what are some of the best practices that we can follow?
It's very important for us to use our regulation as well as what are called fiscal measures, taxation, in order to ensure that healthier foods become the easier choice and unhealthy foods become the more difficult choice for people. When food industry says that it's entirely a matter of individual choice, they ignore the fact that choice can be either conscious, conditioned, or constrained. Conscious based on the right kind of information or the wrong kind of information. Conditioned by aggressive advertising and promotion, and also engineered peer pressure. Constrained because people may not be able to afford healthy foods like fruit and vegetables or healthy edible oils, whereas unhealthy foods may be made less expensive and also marketed, okay, you buy 2 packets, we'll give you 3, third one is free, that kind of stuff. So you need to counter all of this. First, you need to provide the right kind of health information and nutrition literacy. At the same time, you have to use your regulatory power to prevent false advertising, false promotion, false information being spread, and the kind of aggressive marketing practices that are there, quite often unethical, need to be curbed. At the same time, you ought to make sure that the right information is being passed on to the consumer, and that also requires regulation. Then you have to use your taxes in order to raise the price of unhealthy foods so that people are likely to consume less of it, and try and cross-subsidize healthy foods so that people are more likely to consume those foods instead. Now, several countries have started doing that. They've started raising taxes on sugary drinks, on foods with unhealthy fats, what are called so-called junk foods. They've also tried to restrict or completely prevent advertising of unhealthy foods, especially in programs directed at young people. And they're also asking for the constituents of packaged foods to be fully revealed to the consumer so that the consumer can make the right choice. Therefore, there are multiple instruments that we ought to be able to use in order to control the way in which unhealthy foods are being promoted.
Absolutely, sir. So I understand that another stakeholder in this entire gambit are our manufacturers. Why is it important for manufacturers to be upfront about the contents of the food they make, and how can they do this? What steps can be taken to ensure that FOPL, front of pack labeling, is better understood by the intended audience?
If I am a consumer buying a processed food in a package in a shop, then I have every right to know what the constituents of that food are, whether those constituents are good for my health or not, and equally importantly, whether they're good for the health of my family members. It's possible that younger people, particularly young children, may not know what the constituents are. But if I'm a parent, then I ought to have the right to know what is good for my children, what's not good for my children. And similarly, even if I have to serve other people who are coming to my house, I should not be serving them things which are unhealthy. So I must know how high the salt content is, how high the sugar content is, how high the saturated and trans fat content is, because these are the items that have been clearly identified at higher levels to be injurious to health. And if their levels can be reduced and our overall daily consumption can be reduced, we can avoid many of the health disorders that are associated with unhealthy foods. So I must clearly know before I decide which product to buy. That's my right as a consumer. Also, if you do this kind of advertising, it also serves as an educational instrument. If I'm constantly being reminded, okay, this is high in salt, this is high in sugar, this is high in unhealthy fat, even in my home cooking, or even occasionally when I buy street food, I'll be very conscious of the fact that I must avoid high salt, sugar, and unhealthy fat containing foods. So it has an educational impact as well.
Now, the Let's Fix Our Food initiative looks at involving adolescents into this process. What can young people do to make people eat healthy food and play a role in making healthy India? Why did you think this was important?
I believe young people have a great deal of passion for doing the right thing. Unlike older people who are constrained, not just in terms of time, but in terms of their conditioned attitudes and the chalta hai feeling that, doesn't matter. And also remember, older people have been exposed to these foods for quite some time, and these foods are highly addictive in nature. In fact, that's why the children are being also targeted by advertisers, because they want to get the children addicted to these foods. So it's possible that the older people may not necessarily exercise the kind of restraint, or more importantly, advocate with the same level of passion as the younger people. Young people have a stake in their own future, the future of the planet. And therefore, they will take up any cause vigorously, in right earnest. So young people can actually not only change their own behaviors, the behavior of their peers, they can change what is being sold in the school cafeteria, they can influence what is being purchased by their parents and being served at home. And by appealing to the policymakers, saying that our health and our future is at stake by the policies that you take or do not take, they can actually make the policymakers also act in order to curb the production and sale and advertising of unhealthy foods. So the young people are a powerful voice for change, and we believe that they must actually be supported by everybody else in society.
Yes, sir. I too believe that we as youth change makers can step into the role of policymakers, scientists, and researchers and start making change at that ground level. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Reddy.
Most welcome. Happy to have interacted with you, and I hope all your efforts will succeed in creating a healthy food environment.
Thank you so much, sir.